Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett, and I am here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left wing or right wing. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the show where you can ask all of your questions about politics, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. There's no such thing as a dumb question here. What's up, Rulitu? What's up, that Romanian guy? How's it going? How's my audio coming in, everybody? What's up, Lola? My audio coming in okay over there on TikTok? Let me know. Let's see here. Okay. And what is up, JP? And what is up, Mikael Meme? Stephanie says, hello. Do you think Spencer Pratt has a chance? No, I do not think that Spencer Pratt has a chance. But, you know, crazy shit happens in politics all the time, so I could be wrong about that. All right, Rulitu says, if you had vote in Spain, which parties would you vote for? I don't actually know the names of the political parties in Spain, but I'm a left-wing guy, so I would vote for a left-wing party. All right, welcome everybody to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett. Look, excuse me, and I'm here to answer your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. Mikhail Meme says, thoughts on Spencer Pratt? Spencer Pratt is a right-wing reality TV star who has zero experience in government, has a bunch of really strange authoritarian ideas. So yeah, thumbs down on Spencer Pratt. Joshua Kimmick says, are you wealthy? No. I would say that I'm solidly middle class, but I have been both wealthy and poor in my life, mostly poor. Mizernick says, best political ideology in your opinion? Progressive Democrat. Fletch Lives Again says, T is 7 days away from being in public again. Ooh, isn't that interesting? You know, I saw Under the Desk News report that, and I generally find her to be pretty accurate. So, yeah, interesting. How about that? Welcome, everybody, to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer your questions about politics. Israel Franco says, thoughts on what went wrong with Katie Porter? Is she done in government? That is an excellent question, Israel Franco. So, there were a couple of things that came out about her that kind of looked bad, you know, like yelling at her staff or getting into it with a reporter. I don't really think that those were all that bad. The staff one bothered me because I'm like, you need to be better to working class people. But it also felt like, everybody probably had those moments with their staff, like Bill Clinton famously yelled at his staff all the time. I think was it Gretchen Whitmer threw a stapler at somebody or something? I don't remember. My guess is that we are just looking at an expression of unconscious sexism, or we're looking at a popular progressive who went after people, for not being economically populist, getting fucked in the algorithm because the billionaires own the algorithms and shit like that. But yeah, I have no idea why. I have no idea why she is not more popular than she is. All right, Lola says opinion on other political commentators. I mean, all the right wing ones are ding dongs. I think that any left leaning political commentator who does not tell people that they should always vote no matter who the nominee is, then I view those people to be wildly irresponsible. I am looking at you, Hassan. Chloe says, are you Republican or a Democrat? I'm a Democrat. Kyle H says, I support ICE. Why do you support ICE? Kyle H, does it not bother you, all of the laws that they are breaking and all of the barbaric behavior, all of the torture and potential murder and potential sexual assault that looks like is happening in ICE detention facilities? Does that not bother you, Kyle H? Okay, Joshua Kimmich says, J.D. Vance said that the gas prices are cheaper now than under the Biden administration. Well, he's a liar. News at 11. Lucas says, if you could vote in the UK, who would you vote for? One of the left parties, either Labour or the Greens. Amelia says, what is your opinion on the end of the Third Reich? Didn't happen soon enough. Kyle H says, no, because legal immigration needs to stop and they need to enforce the law. So there are ways to stop illegal immigration that don't involve torturing people and don't involve breaking the law, Kyle H. ICE is not doing that. Like, we had border enforcement and we had deportations under Obama and under Biden, and we did not have the same kind of rampant lawlessness, the same kind of torture, the same kind of waste of taxpayer money. Like, we are spending lots and lots of our money, our taxpayer money that we're sending to the governments. They are using to house people who are being illegally detained and feeding them food that has gone bad and it's filled with maggots and their milk has gone bad and they're not getting medical care, and some of these people haven't been able to see their lawyer yet, you know. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't understand that argument doesn't make any sense to me, Kyle H. Unless you are completely unaware of what ICE is doing, I do not see how any human being can support what they are doing. Miguel Meme says, is it elections in LA this year? It's elections everywhere in America this year. Kyle H says, maybe don't break into a country. Some of the people that ICE is detaining did not break into the country. Kyle H, how do you feel about that? A judge recently ruled that 90% of ICE detentions are illegal, and that means that the people that they are detaining are either citizens or are legal residents. How does that make you feel, Kyle H? I kind of don't believe you're a real person, Kyle H. I don't think that a person could hear the things that I'm saying and still think that it's okay that ICE does that to people. Okay, I don't have any opinion on neolibertarian flangism. I don't think that's a real word. I think it's trolling. Toil Racharan says, do you think we actually need politicians? Things would still get done without them. I do think that having a structure of organized politics is probably better, of organized government is probably better than some sort of anarchism. 22 Crank says, is fascism bad? Yes. Smokey says, you prove you all hate the United States as you push America, no structural knowledge. I don't hate America. I don't hate the United States. I'm not really sure what you mean, Smokey. Jared said, ICE is terrible, but we have bigger issues right now, genocides and the people in the files. I mean, I guess to me, what you're saying is like, this type of cancer is bad, but we have other types of cancers that we also need to fix. Like, I don't think that we can be a functioning country if we have a rogue agency that is just picking people up, no charges, no evidence, no what do you call it? What's the where you see some crime happening and so you're allowed to search the car or something. I forget what the word is. Yeah. I don't think I think that is at the very top of our priorities list. Kyle H says, if you break the rules of your green card, you will be deported, and I am an immigrant, so I would know. Kyle H, you are in question jail. If the next thing you say is not a question, then I am booting you because you are not responding to the things that I am telling you. I am telling you that ICE is doing awful shit to people who are here illegally, and you just keep on regurgitating right-wing talking points about, well, you shouldn't be here illegally, etc. Dark Porium says, what do you think of technocracy? Depends on how you define it. Mikhail Bean says, who is RFK Jr.? RFK Jr. is a former environmental lawyer turned anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist who was appointed Homeland Health and Human Services Secretary by the Trump administration, and he is completely cuckoo bananas and doing a really terrible job. Probable cause. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Vittorio Janone says, do you think Mussolini did some good before the alliance with Hitler? My guess is no, but I'm not like fully enmeshed in the history of that era. Lala says, top 3 European countries in your opinion. I mean, they're all great. I've been to France, I have been to the Netherlands, I have been to the UK, I've been to Italy, and I love them all. Okay. Jared says, do you think that Israel and our own government did 9/11? No. Kyle H says, because they are resisting arrest from ICE agents, so they need to be dealt with force. Again, that was not a question, so you're out of here. And just to anybody who was listening, Kyle H was a fake person, so don't listen to anything that he said. All right, A Diamond says, are you Democrat or Republican? I'm a Democrat. RB says, why did Trump pardon all the January 6ers? For a couple of reasons. Number one, he views all of those people who were arrested for January 6th as being arrested for trying to keep him president illegally, and he liked that. Number two is he wanted to show people that there would be no legal consequences for doing violence and property destruction so long as you were doing it for him. All right, let's see here. Jared says political parties used to divide us and not fight against the common enemy. So that is inaccurate, Jared. There are definitely differences between outcomes depending on who is in charge, Democrats or Republicans. It is true that the billionaire class has been using the social media in order to create schisms between voters to make it feel like the voters are your enemy as opposed to the billionaire class and the Republican Party that works with them. But I take your point. Ashton says, do you like Spencer Pratt? No, I do not. Average Joe, great to see you again, says, do you think there's a distinction between refusing to endorse a candidate versus discouraging voting for a candidate? You know, I do. I was just recently filling out my ballot, and I was checking out like all the different groups that would endorse specific candidates. And so there were certain races where like the organizations would not endorse a candidate, but only because they felt like there wasn't a candidate in the race that they would endorse. They would be like, look, this person's probably going to win. This person's better than nothing, but we don't love them, so we're not going to endorse them. Okay, Joshua Kimmy says, in 24, I wanted Trump to win. I thought he would end all wars, deport criminals, and fix the economy. I mean, I'm guessing you're saying this, Joshua, because you've recognized that is actually not what is happening. Jared says, Trump is worse than Biden, but they both submit to Israel and didn't do what was best for the U.S. Again, Jared, I think that you are ignoring a lot of important details. For example, the Biden administration put pressure on Netanyahu to stop doing war crimes against the people of Palestine. Trump told Netanyahu, do whatever the fuck you want. Biden instituted sanctions on illegal West Bank settlements. Trump undid those sanctions. Biden stopped sending Netanyahu 2,000-pound bombs. Trump undid that and started sending them 2,000-pound bombs again. And Harris communicated to her base that she would be better on this issue than Biden. And so there's a difference. If you're looking for the politicians that vote against sending more money and weapons to Israel, they are all in the Democratic Party. If you are looking for the politicians that don't take money from AIPAC, they are all in the Democratic Party. If you are looking for the politicians that stand up to Netanyahu and Israel, they are all in the Democratic Party. So you can miss me with the both sides nonsense, Jared. Okay, Average Joe says, who do you think is more to blame for Harris's poor performance in 24? Her refusal to distinguish herself from Biden, her shift to the right on immigration and militarism, or the opinion of a Twitch streamer? I mean, I don't think that any of those things are in the top 3 or 4, Average Joe. Yeah. And specifically her shift to the right on immigration and militarism, I don't know if that's an accurate thing to say, is that she shifts to the right on militarism. Can you give me an example of her doing that? But according to polling, America wants the Democratic Party to be for this right on immigration. So if anything, that should have helped her in the election. Vittorio says, do you believe in deportation of legal immigrants if they commit a real big crime? Ooh, that's an interesting question, Vittorio. I guess the devil's in the details, like if they're a legal immigrant, then they are here legally, they are subject to our laws, then why would we deport them and not just put them in jail here in our country? The Fixer Mike says, want to blame Biden for something? He pledged to be one-term president and tank 24. I believe that is 100% accurate. Joshua Kimmich says, are you pro-Ukraine? Yes. Jared says, I wish Mamdani could run. He seems to actually care about the people. Lots of politicians care about the people, Jared. I love Mamdani, but he does not have a monopoly on caring about people. Sawyer Locke says, what some of your favorite movies? Excellent question, Sawyer Locke. You know what I saw? And this is a real title of a movie, so I'm not being cute here, but there's a movie called My Old Ass that was fucking awesome. And I think everybody needs to watch that movie. But it's difficult to go on a live stream and tell people they need to watch My Old Ass, Mitchell Garcia says, who'd you vote for? Democrats up and down the ballot. Captain says, do you think dual citizens should be allowed to run for government positions? Captain, I don't have strong feelings about this. I understand why a person would not want to renounce their dual citizenship to run for political office, but I'm also down with making that a thing that you have to do. You know, like if you want to be a politician, you know, renounce your dual citizenship. You should have both fucking feet in the country that you are running. You know, and then if you want to be a dual citizen when you're out of office again, sure, go for it. You know. Okay, George Hamilton says, "Are you left wing or right wing?" I'm left wing. Abel says, "What do you think about Catalans and Catalonia?" I don't know. The Victor Mike says, "Foreigners for government positions? Sure. The only rule is the presidency." I think they're talking specifically about people with dual citizenship. Jared says, "How big of an issue do you think Israel is to America? Do you think there are more important issues?" That's a really good question. I mean, how do we judge what is the most important issue? You know, what if a house is on fire? Where do you need to put the fire out first? You know, I guess the biggest issue would be the fire spreading to other places. So I would say like electoral reform. I would say like getting the money out of politics, corruption. I think those are probably bigger issues than Israel specifically. If we vote for exclusively the Democratic Party, if the Republican Party was out of office, we would have plenty of pushback against politicians who just want to fund Israel. So I'm not really all that worried about that being an issue. But if we don't fix our electoral system, so we don't get the money out of politics, then Israel will currently have an iron grip on the Republican Party, and the Republican Party will remain sort of like entrenched in American power. So, you know. Mikhail Meme says, "Was Obama a centrist?" Ooh, that's a really good question, Mikhail Meme. So there's a difference between the way that a politician governs and the way that a politician is. Like, I firmly believe that Obama was more left-wing than he governed, but an argument could be made that he governed as a centrist Democrat. Now, there were probably political realities that made that necessary. It probably had a lot of pressure to govern that way because he was our first black president, and so anything that he did would be looked at as completely radical, socialist, communist, etc. But yeah, I think that if Obama was a dictator instead of a president, then he probably would have been a more left-wing dictator than he was a president. Okay. Average Joe says she gave multiple speeches where she stated something to the effect of making sure the U.S. military was the most lethal fighting force. I'll search for specific quotes. I gotta be honest, Average Joe, I think that's just table stakes for any Democrat. Because if you don't say that as a Democrat, then you get called squishy, you get called a peacenik, you get called, somebody doesn't give a shit about national security, So this is something that, for people like yourself, Average Joe, people that I have this disagreement with about judging the Democratic Party by this impossibly high standard, I think you tend to ignore the political realities of what it means to be a Democrat in America. And so a lot of times when you see that kind of rhetoric, when you see Obama being like real aggressive with his drone strikes against terrorist organizations, like look for the political pressure from the American people, from the elections that him and his colleagues are subject to. Okay, Stephen Peterson says, "What do you think about the Republican scoring pretty high in California voting?" I forget his name. So you'll have to be more specific, Stephen Peterson, because there's Steve Hilton, there's Spencer Pratt, and there's different reasons for either of them being more popular than they should be. I think the short answer, Stephen Peterson, no matter who you mention, is crowded primary fields. Like, there's 2 Republicans running, and there's 100 Democrats running, and so the 100 Democrats are splitting the votes, and so the 2 Republicans are kind of sharing the 30% of the vote that would always go to a Republican candidate in California. Okay, Sam says, "What happened with Henry Novak and Southampton? I've heard something big happened. I don't know anything about that." Average Joe says, "Oh, I'm not a Democrat. LOL. I hate our party system." I think you probably said 2-party system. No, just party system. Okay, Average Joe. Well, my point remains the same. Okay. Let's see here. Triska, Tink, and Mia, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. All right. Steve Peterson says his name is Steve Hilton. Seems to be okay, but I'm unsure if you know more. Yeah, he's just like a solid Trump ding dong who refuses to acknowledge that Biden won the 2020 election. Yeah, Fox News personality, zero experience in government, absolutely no place being governor of California. He is going to lose so long as at least one Democrat advances in the jungle primary in California. Cameron Hodge says, "What happened with the California elections last night?" I am unaware of any updated results, but because California is such a large state with such liberal voting laws, meaning that people can mail their ballot on the day of the election, which means that that ballot still has to get to the election office and then get opened and counted. We usually don't see certified results for a couple of days. Dog Dad with a dad bod says, "Do you see J.D. Vance running in the future?" Oh, definitely. Yeah, he might dip out at 28 because he kind of has poisoned his own reputation being involved with the Trump administration, but he is definitely looking at a potential presidential run. Maybe governor of a state could also be it, but I would be stunned if he did not run for president. Okay. Mikhail Meme says, "What can we do to prevent more people trying to take their life and possibly prevent it?" Outreach, investing in mental health care. Yeah, I don't know. It's a massive problem, obviously. But yeah, I think that you know you need organizations funded by the government to make sure that people aren't falling through the cracks. And if you don't have those organizations, then those people fall through the cracks. All right, John Abbott says, "Thoughts on Bernie's proposal to have 50% of all profits from AI be returned to the citizens of the U.S. through a sovereign wealth fund?" I'm for it. I might actually put that number higher. Because all of these AI models would not work without the collective work, with the collective creative output of human beings. Without us messaging each other on social media, without us writing movies and TV shows and plays and novels, like, we made AI. So I would put that number even higher, you know? All right, what's up, Choo Choo Bob? Yeah, very long, very long. So can you shorten that up, please? People think they just started relaxing, so this was silly attack routes. Other than that, not much is going on here as of late. Okay, yeah, Chooch. If I'm happy to hear that, but I've been hearing that ICE is still doing real bad shit. Okay, Cameron Hodges, thoughts on all Trump endorsed candidates winning? He obviously still has strong pull. I think it's a couple of things. I think that he's still in charge of the MAGA party, and there is, fewer and fewer people identify as a Republican that is not MAGA. So obviously his endorsement is going to carry a lot of weight in certain areas. But you could also argue that he's kind of pushing on an open door where only endorsing candidates that are already going to win. So I think both worlds are possible, but I think both worlds don't make him more popular than he was in like 2016 or 2018 or whatever. Joshua Kim says, "How do we lower criminality and shootings?" The number one way to solve all crimes, violent and otherwise, is to eliminate poverty. That is the number one way that we get rid of crimes. More than that, gun control legislation. And investing in mental health care. Cameron Hodges, what percentage of Republicans are MAGA versus more moderates? I mean, that's a moving target, Cameron Hodge. I would say that number has probably only gone up since Trump has been on the scene. My guess right now is that the party is like 80% MAGA. There are so few Republicans who dare to stand up to him. Yeah. I just you could argue that there's like a new wing being brought up under like the Tucker Carlsons, like the fake populists who are anti-Israel. But I don't think that they have the majority in the party. They certainly don't have any political power right now. Everybody who's elected right now is a MAGA Republican. All right, John Ollie. I don't see anybody spamming the chat. So Average Joe says, "Do you see the link I said in case you want to check it out? I could find other examples, but that was the first." Again, I don't think that her saying that was bad. I think you need to remember that the Democratic Party exists in America, Average Joe, and you got to think about what America votes for, how America views the Democratic Party, and how Democratic politicians need to respond in order to get those votes. Okay, Mikhail Meme says, "Is there any Charlie Kirk but Democratic?" I mean, I guess it would depend on how you define Charlie Kirk, because when you ask me, is there a Democratic version of Charlie Kirk? What I hear is there a Democrat or somebody who goes to college campuses and lies to college kids to try to convince them to vote for Democrats, which I don't think that there is. But if you're asking, like, are there people that go to college campuses who are Democrats to talk to college kids and try to convince them to be a part of reality with the rest of us, then yeah, I think so. I think they were called like the Unfucking America Tour or something like that. Alrighty. Joshua Kimmich says, "Do you know who Ulf Christensen is?" I do not. Cameron Hodge says, "Has there ever been a Democrat with that much of an influence and power in their party?" I guess Obama, you could argue. I think Bernie, you could argue. AOC, you could argue. But I don't think it's the same. Like, the ideology of MAGA is so firmly enmeshed in just one individual human being, as opposed to Bernie or AOC or Mamdani or Obama just being really popular Democrats. So yeah, I don't know. Like, the entire ideology of MAGA is about eschewing everything else. Like to denying the evidence of your lying eyes and ears. Jacob says, "Are you Democrat?" Yes. The Fixer Mike says, "The Democrats are populated with more critical thinkers and fewer ideologues." I believe that is accurate. Joshua Kimmich says, "Is there a difference between president and prime minister, or is it just a name?" I think it's just a name, but I could be wrong about that. Boudica Rising says, "Can you only talk about politics within the U.S. still?" Yeah, Boudica, I'd not become an expert in every country's government in the last 24 hours. What's up, Spirus? Sacred Space. I'm terrified that they are pushing fascism. You're right to be terrified, Sacred Space. Now, you can be buoyed by the fact that they are incompetent. You can be buoyed by the fact that they are wildly unpopular. You can be buoyed by the fact that there are a lot of people in America who are pushing back and doing the work of making sure that we stop their fascist agenda. But they have a lot of power still. And, we have not won the midterms yet. So there is still a ton of work to be doing, Sacred Space. So I hope that you are out there doing that work. Okay, Odin says, "Is there a difference between president and prime minister? Several governments have both." Oh, interesting. Yeah, I got no idea. Adele says, "Do you think that the American dream is dead?" I don't think it's dead, because I think it can come back. But there currently is no path to the American dream, but we can make a path. We just have to vote for the correct people going forward. Cameron Hodge says, "When Trump is done in 28 or passes on, will MAGA eventually fade and be non-existent in the 2030s?" So that's a really good question, Cameron. Nobody really knows. My best guess is that we are going to see kind of like a scramble for the Republican Party base. And there's going to be like different wings, and which wing is successful is anybody's guess. So my personal opinion is that anybody trying to do Trump but who isn't Trump is going to fail. So that's JD Vance, Marco Rubio, the fucking ding dong, and DeSantis, as one of Trump's stupid kids, like that. So I think the two main factions are probably going to be like neoconservatives, the way that like a Liz Cheney, or who else could I put, Susan Collins, people like that, or the Tucker Carlson wing, which is the kind of like anti-interventionist, isolationist, anti-Israel, fake populist wing. And I would also put Josh Hawley in that camp as well. That's the one that I'm the most worried about. Because that's the way that Trump came to power, was pretending to be an economic populist, and then he got into power and just cut taxes for the wealthy and fucked everybody else. Okay, Vazdan says, why does corporate hate us? Corporate doesn't hate us the same way that they just don't view us as human. They view us as worker bees. They view us as peasants on work, tilling their fields to make them their billions of dollars. Joshua Kimmich says, thoughts on Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is a liar. He is a political hack. He's a con artist. He doesn't actually believe the things that he says. He has to say lies in order to put food on the table. So never put yourself in a position, everybody. Never put yourself in a position where you have to lie in order to make money, everybody. Otherwise you'll be a soulless husk the way that Ben Shapiro is. Okay, Italiana says, will we ever be the same again in this country because all Trump's done within the political world? I don't think we'll ever be the same, but we could potentially be better than we were before. I don't believe that there is a single time in history that we should be trying to go back to, because even if we had the sort of like the budget surplus and unparalleled economic prosperity of the 90s, there was still a lot of unconscious racism and sexism and a lot of sort of like conservative ideologies and billionaire bootlicking that existed in our culture that we need to exercise, going back to the Biden era or the Obama era, like there are things that I want from back then, but we need to be thinking about changing America for the better, being the best version of America. Joshua Kamek says, are both parties bad? I would say that it is inaccurate to say that both parties are bad. I think it is more accurate to say that one party is imperfect and the other party is so bad that it makes the other party look perfect by contrast. RK5 Edit says, do you know anything about the immigration in Sweden and what do you think about it? I don't know anything about the immigration in Sweden specifically. What I do know is that immigrants are a net positive wherever they go. There are obviously issues with mass migration. Systems can be strained and resources need to be reallocated. But if everybody can be chill about it and recognize that, diversity is a strength, and, immigrants tend to commit crimes at lower rates than naturalized citizens, and if we could all just fucking loosen up a little bit and be cool about shit, then yeah, everybody should be welcome. There's more than enough space. Cameron Hodge says, does Trump genuinely believe he is doing the right thing and just so far gone, or simply evil? I think that Donald Trump is the kind of person who thinks that if anybody else in the world were as powerful as he was, they would be doing the exact same thing as him. Meaning, fuck everybody but me and my family and the people that kissed my ass. So he doesn't believe that there's such a thing as a good politician. He doesn't believe that there's such a thing as a good human being. He says, if you were in my position where you had the potential to be a billionaire because of your inheritance and your business connections, then you would also lie, cheat, and steal in order and fuck over everybody and poison people with fucking chemical runoffs from factories and loosen restrictions on chemical pollutants and PFOS and forever chemicals, etc. All right, Ale says, do you think Kamala would have not started the Iran war? I'm like, what? Nobody can be 100% confident because we don't have access to that timeline, unfortunately, but I'm as confident as a human being can be. I am 99% confident that she would not have started a war in Iran. Caleb says, how would you argue with someone who says a crime is a crime when it comes to border crossings? I would say that a crime is not a crime. I think that giving somebody a paper cut is different than shooting somebody in the head. I think that jaywalking is different than grand larceny. I think that there's a difference between first, second, and third degree murder. So yeah, no, a crime is not a crime. There's misdemeanors, there's felonies. A crime is not a crime. Okay, Cameron Hodge says, even though Trump is evil, he still seems mentally sharp in most interviews, I think. I think that there's a big difference between the mental decline of Trump in old age and the mental decline of Biden in old age, where people are talking about the ways in which Trump is no longer there, but he can still go out and appear there in interviews and stuff like that, and still string a couple of thoughts together. Whereas Biden 100% could not do that. All right, Spire says, do you think America is the best country on earth? I don't think that any country is better than any other country. I don't think any country's citizens are better than any other country's citizens. So what are we judging? Are we judging our governments? Because the American government is certainly not the best government on earth right now. Stephen Peterson says, do you think the American dream of simply being a homeowner, which many only want, is dead? I don't think it's dead. I just think that the path is blocked right now, and it can be unblocked. Mikhail says, what happens if the Democrats win the midterm elections? So it's difficult to say because it really depends on how much power the Democrats are able to amass. Like, there's a difference between having a 1-seat majority in the House and having a 20-seat majority in the House. There's a difference between having a 1-seat majority in the Senate and having a 20-seat majority in the Senate. There's a difference between having just the House or just the Senate or both houses. At the very least, we could stop Trump from being able to pass more bills. At the very least, we would have more say in congressional hearings, so potentially more accountability. But then after that, the sky's the limit, depending on how much power is in there. All right, Average Joe says, knowing how much more difficult it is to flip partisan voters than it is to motivate non-voters, couldn't an argument be made that her appeals to the right were the biggest factor in her loss? So, Average Joe, I do not believe that Kamala Harris was making overtures to the right that were out of pocket, shall we say. Like, some people would argue that campaigning with Liz Cheney meant that she was tacking to the right. I don't think that that is an accurate statement at all. Campaigning with Liz Cheney was a way of saying that Trump is so awful that even Liz Cheney is going to vote for me. But that message got chewed up and spit out by the social media algorithms as Liz Cheney and Kamala Harris are the same. They are best friends. Not just Liz Cheney, but Dick Cheney. They're all the exact same. This is her trying to appeal to Republican voters as opposed to saying, hey, Republican voters, your nominee is fucking psychotic. So even this Republican is going to vote for me, this famous Republican. Triska and Chili Willy, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. 21 says, do you think that the Democrats are going to win the midterms? So I think that if the election is free and fair, then we're looking at a blue tsunami. But I am worried about the ways in which Trump and the Republican Party might try to steal the election in 2026 or invalidate the election in 2026. Like, they have been doing things that make it seem like they're going to seize voting machines or try to intimidate voters or try to reverse elections via lawsuits. Like it worries me how not worried about the midterms Trump is. All right, Cameron Hodge says, what is happening with the oil and leadership in Venezuela that we are supposed to control? So the oil in Venezuela, there's a lot of problems with trying to extract it. Number one, it's a different kind of oil, and it's a harder oil to extract. There's also a lot of sectarian violence in Venezuela, so the infrastructure needed and the military presence needed for a private company to go into Venezuela to get that oil is more than most companies are willing to do. And so the last I heard about it, they were having a hard time finding a company that wanted to go in there. And I don't believe that they have the sort of like military support there yet, even if they did have a company willing to do that. But I have not seen the most recent reporting on that. That's just the last thing that I heard. Inky says, this guy lies to listen to him. He has no idea what he's talking about. Can you tell me a single thing that I've said that was inaccurate, Inky? John Telephone says, where are you in the political compass? I'm a progressive Democrat. Stephen Peterson says, do you think Kamala not going on podcast played a role in her getting less votes? Potentially, but I don't think it was as big of an issue as the incumbency bias and the billionaires controlling all of our information environments. Let's see here. Cameron Hodge says, do we have boots on the ground in Venezuela? I don't think so, but again, I haven't gotten the up to the minute. Yeah, Inky, I'm still waiting for you to tell me a single thing that I've said that was inaccurate. Keedy Berry says, when is there going to be a United Ireland? I don't know. You got to ask an Irish person that. Clean Fresh Ed, it's good to see you again, says, did you see Ashley St. Clair say Elon Musk has elections with space lasers? You know, I did see that. I don't really find that to be all that convincing evidence that he did. Like, I don't believe that he is giving evidence of stealing elections to one of his baby mamas. I don't believe that everything that he texts to the women who have the unfortunate luck of getting impregnated by him are true. You know, Inky says yes by saying Republicans will not play fair when Democrats are the ones who rig things. So there's actually zero evidence that Democrats have ever rigged an election, Inky, but there's a lot of evidence that Republicans have suppressed the votes in specific states and specific districts. Inky, if you are at all interested in that information, I will happily send it to you, but I don't think that you are actually interested. I think you just want to spread misinformation. So I've given you one opportunity to ask me a question, Inky, and if you don't, then you're out of here, because I don't allow people just to come on my live stream and say things that are inaccurate. Marshall Hurls says, hey back, Marshall. Blanca Falcon says, Texas Secretary of State resigned and replaced with Christian nationalists. We are screwed in Texas. They may make it harder to vote, Blanca. They may make your vote mean less, but they cannot take away your power, Blanca. So do not be cynical and do not give up. That's what they want. They want you to give up. Inky says, LOL, it's not accurate, bro. How do Republicans suppress the vote? Oh, excellent question, Inky, and thank you for asking. So partisan and racial gerrymandering, closing down DMVs, voter ID laws, closing down polling locations. Have you ever noticed that in red states, if there's like a Democratic district, then the voting lines there are like 9 hours long? That's one of the ways in which Republicans suppress the vote. Have you ever heard any stories about Republican secretaries of state being like really aggressive with throwing out ballots because the quote unquote signatures didn't match good enough for them? Inky31 says, what's wrong with voter ID? Excellent question. So in order to get a voter ID, you would need to be able to go to the DMV to get an ID. And when Republicans pass voter ID laws, they shut down DMVs in Democratic areas to make it harder for specific Democrats to be able to get IDs to be able to vote. So yeah, there's answers to all your questions there. And I know you're probably just going to say that I'm lying or making shit up, but all of that stuff that I said was accurate, and you can give it a Google if you like. Tom says, ever considered being straight? Yeah, when I was in college, and I was like, yeah, I guess I am straight. But if you're trying to insinuate that I'm gay, you might want to talk to your mom. Cole says, do you think that ranked choice voting would solve some problems with our government? Yes, but not all. We had ranked choice voting in New York for the mayoral election in 2021, and we still voted for Eric Adams. So ranked choice voting does not solve every problem. All right, Strawberry says, not to mention that working class people of color don't have the time to just hit up the DMV. That is 100% accurate, Strawberry. Average Joe, Marshall Hurl says, checking in, see a Jewish name in politics. This should be fun. Wow, that could really be anti-Semitic, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to not be, Marshall, however you pronounce your name. Okay. Hope and Bloom says, thoughts on the primaries last night. I haven't seen any outcomes yet, and because California is such a big state, sometimes it takes a long time to count the ballots. So I'm waiting a couple of days before I look for any results. Oscar says, what do you think about the government? The current Trump government? One of the worst we've ever had. Cameron Howard says, how much does Republicans' big Christian ideology help them in general elections? That's a really good question. I think that does really help them. I think that when you tie a religious ideology to a political ideology, you are basically telling people to vote on faith. So they do not need to see outcomes from their government. They do not to see proof from their governments. The same way that they don't need to see any proof that their God exists or that heaven exists or the Bible is real. You don't need to see proof that your politicians are delivering for you or doing what they say they're supposed to be doing. All right. Noon says, is far left right? Yes, far left is right. That is to say, the far left is correct. Inky says, if you don't already have an ID, you are probably not responsible. So I don't believe that people being born into poverty or people having to work 3 jobs just to make a living, Inky, means that somebody is not responsible. I would really hope, Inky, that you would have the kind of open mind to think that just because a person is poor does not mean that they're not responsible or lazy. That there are plenty of people who are just stuck in their specific circumstances because of the way that capitalism has been structured to make advancement basically impossible. Inky says, not true. Without God, you have moral grounding. It's just because you say so. I think you probably meant to say without God, you have no moral grounding. And I disagree with that entirely. So I do not, I'm an agnostic. I don't really believe in God, but I believe that I'm probably have stronger morals than people that claim to be Christian. Let's see here. Cameron says, do you predict gas prices will tank after the Iran war? No, I do not. The way that shipping of raw crude across the ocean works, there is a massive lag. So I believe that we are not going to see prices tank unless it is specifically a corrupt deal between fossil fuel companies and the Republican Party to try to win the midterm elections. Okay. Average Joe, I'm getting to that. Sorry. But I got a live one here on TikTok. Inky says, with that ID, how do you rent? How do you get government assistance? Cash a check. There are lots of ways to get that done without an ID. Inky31. I think it's really strange, Inky, that you don't think a person can survive without an ID. Like, lots of people don't have ID. And, you know, it's very possible that there's people who live a type of life that you just don't understand because you don't see it. Inky, you know, I think you really need to open your mind to the possibility that people have vastly different lives than you. Inky. All right, what's up, Joao from Portugal? Inky says, should they vote then? Everybody has the right to vote. That's in the Constitution, Inky. Just because somebody's poor doesn't mean that they shouldn't have the right to vote. Just because somebody is desperate and struggling because of the situation in which they were born does not mean they shouldn't have the right to vote, right, Inky? Okay, let's see here. Average Joe says, didn't seem out of pocket for her to campaign with Republicans. Doesn't that feel kind of gross on some level? If it didn't seem out of pocket for me to chill with pedos, wouldn't that give you pause? I completely disagree with that analogy, Average Joe. Average Joe, what is it about the message of Trump is so psychotic that even Republicans like Liz Cheney are going to vote for her? Why does that equal to you that Democrats who do that strategy or employ that messaging strategy are Republicans or have the same platform as Republicans? Like, it seems like you're being very dogmatic about that. Like, you're not allowed to associate with other politicians. You know, like, I don't think, as bad as Republican politicians are, and you know how I feel about them, I think calling them all pedos is a little bit hyperbolic, you know? Like, you could not find a human being on earth that I disagree with more than Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney. But they at least had the moral foundation to stand up to Donald Trump and Republicans. Like, can you not give them that? Can you not give that there are Americans in this country who vibe with people like Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney and who are perfectly nice, reasonable people? Average Joe? Yeah, let me know, man. Okay, Dave says, not sure if poverty equates no access to ID. Poverty doesn't necessarily equate no access to ID, but it makes it a lot more difficult, you know? Alrighty. Stephen Peterson says, do you think Trump got more votes because he told everyone Biden is sharp as a tack but wasn't true? When you say they, who do you mean they? I think that the reason why Trump and Republicans did so well in 2024 comes down to three factors. I think it was misinformation and propaganda funneled by an unprecedented amount of billionaire influence in our information channels. I think it was incumbency bias. Everybody around the globe was pissed at whoever was in charge, whether it was left, right, or center, whether it was here or in Europe or in Asia or in Africa. And I think the fact that Kamala Harris only had 100 days to run her campaign. Ooh, Optimist says, voter ID is a must. It is not a must. Optimist, elections have been working great without voter ID for a very long time. Inky says, it's his opinion and wrong. You need ID to enroll your kids in school. You need for everything. That is factually inaccurate, Inky. If you would like, I will send you information on how that is factually inaccurate. but you are not allowed to say wrong things on my live stream or I will boot you. So you're back in question jail, Inky, letting you know. Cameron says, did Biden debate performance hand Trump the win? I think so. 100%. I think Biden deciding to run for a second term handed Trump the presidency. Joe says, I think guns should be very restricted here in Portugal. It is, and we don't have gun problems. I agree with that. Joe. 11 cases in California. You have to have ID to register to vote. You have to be registered to get a ballot. I do not believe that is accurate. 11K. Okay. Inky says, based on school district, that's fair. I don't know what you mean by that, Inky, but remember, you're in question jail. That is your one and only strike. Cameron Hodge says, whatever happened to Andrew Yang? I liked him. Andrew Yang is the same as every other fucking billionaire that thinks that just because he's rich, he's allowed to be president. Like, he just went away, you know? And while I appreciate Andrew Yang making policies like universal basic income a little bit more front of mind, like, if you really give a shit, you don't just run for president. Alrighty. Gingerman says, think about elderly people and their need for ID. I don't really know what argument that is that you are making there, Gingermint. Stephen Peterson says, it seemed like the Democratic Party said Biden is sharp, but immediately switched to Kamala after the debate. So if you read like the insider's accounting of who knew that Biden was not with it, it was not the Democratic Party at large. It was mainly Biden's family, like his wife and his son, and specifically the people in his cabinet who were sort of like running defense for him. Everybody else was kind of like giving him the benefit of the doubt and believing the people who were working with him every single fucking day. And there were a lot of really good people who thought that switching nominees was a really bad idea, even if they were progressive Democrats. Like AOC went out there and said, Biden's the nominee, trying to switch right now is crazy. So yeah, and it wasn't an immediate switch to Kamala Harris. I think there was something like 18 days between the debate and switching to Kamala Harris. Inky says, birth certificates, etc., that's a form of ID. No, birth certificates are a form of ID, but birth certificates are not free. You know, I just had a little girl, Inky. She is 5.5 weeks old right now. And if I want her birth certificate, I have to mail a check for $35 to the government. And I'm sorry, but if you are struggling to put food on the table, if you are struggling to pay your electric bill and your rent, and you're working 3 jobs, you don't have time to do that shit. Me and my wife are both on paternity leave. I have not had time to do the birth certificate yet, you know? She's gonna get mad at me when she hears that. But yeah, man. Yeah, can you open your heart to the idea that some people's lives are a lot harder than you are giving them credit for, Inky? All right, Average Joe. Yeah, you're on one today, man. Like, you know how much I love you being here and how much respect I have for you, but you're being so hyperbolic and unfair to the Democratic Party, to Kamala Harris right now. Like, I just don't think that the analogies that you're making in my live stream right now are fair or just, you know. All right, Mikhail, what was the question that you asked that I did not answer? Why do you joke often about people's moms? It's just for fun, you know, so we have a little bit of joy in our lives, you know. Okay. Clean Fresh Edit says, do you think Arizona and Georgia will get bluer or redder in 10 years than they are now? So I don't know. The problem with trying to predict political trends, Clean Fresh Edit, is that it has a lot to do with things that we cannot predict happening in the future. What I do know is that right-wing propaganda machines and our information environments being owned by the billionaire class is going to make punishing the Democratic Party for good faith mistakes that they make or things that are out of their control really, really easy. We've seen it happen time and time again, where during the Biden administration, a group of Supreme Court justices appointed by Republican presidents removed the right to a to a safe abortion from, a certain percentage of women in this country. And people were mad at the Democratic Party for that. It's like pushing on an open door. So the billionaire class in the Republican Party have so much power, and they have so much influence. And the Trump administration has only codified that more. So I cannot tell you that should the Democratic Party win in 26 and win in 28 and fucking crush it, that there still won't be some political backlash, because America is always ready to believe that the Democrats are bad and that Republicans aren't as bad as people think they are. When I think it's actually the opposite. I think the Democratic Party is better than people give it credit for, and the Republican Party is worse than people give it credit for. So yeah, none of this stuff is going to happen by itself. We have to be part of the change that we want to see. Like, do you live in Arizona or Georgia? Do you know people who live in those states? Do the work. Encourage them to work. Alrighty, let's see here. Me says, what's for you the best ideology? Mine is social democracy. Is social democracy the same as being a democratic socialist? Is it the same as the sort of like Scandinavian model? Is it the same as the politics espoused by people like Bernie Sanders and AOC and Zoran Mamdani? Because if so, I agree with you. I call it being a progressive Democrat, but you can call it whatever you like. FPL says, thoughts on English politics, don't know too much about it. Inky says, billionaires, as he types from his iPhone on TikTok. Billionaires come and go. They typic life better. So Inky, I'm so not, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm so not convinced that you are real. Like you have asked questions. You have put up the image of being here in good faith, but then you just repeat these like bullshit right-wing billionaire sycophant talking points. And I'm just like, yeah, no, bullshit. Like a bot in a server farm in India can read the exact same bullshit off of their sheet and type the exact same bullshit, So it's like, if you really want to know, Inky, like if you really want to get the straight information, then you have to stop making statements in my live stream. You have to only ask questions, because I don't believe you. I do not buy that you are a real person. You want to know why I don't believe you're a real person? Because every time I make a point that contradicts one of your points, you just move on to something else, as opposed to actually reckoning with the new information that you were given. So my voice is going, and so I got to start wrapping things up. What's up, Gamer Jam? Good to see you again. So I got to start wrapping up. But get your final questions in now. Dave says, I'm a billionaire because of my iPhone. How do I cash that in? I think he's trying to suggest that living in society that has billionaires means that you exist at the behest of billionaires. That because you use technology that billionaires are profiting off of, that you are beholden to them, shit like that. I don't know, man. I don't know, Inky. Yeah, Inky, I'm not gonna block you in case you want to come back, but I want you to remember, if you ever do come back, that you are on extremely thin ice. And I will block you if you make too many false statements. For example, you said you wouldn't have an iPhone without investments. And I think that is a lie. I think that is inaccurate. Sound like fucking RFK Jr. over here. All right, everybody. If you want to support the show, you can. There are mechanisms for that. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, You can be a subscriber to my Twitch channel for free. Helps me out a ton, costs you $0. You can also join the Patreon for as little as $1 a month, but there is a very fun incentive at $10 a month, so hopefully you will join on that if you have the dollars available for that. I can't read the name of my special funders today because I'm losing my voice. If you have any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, please get in touch. I want to be a resource for you to be more informed and more involved in politics. So use me however you need to use me, guys. DMs are open. You can email me through my website. Link is in the bio. And you can hit me up on my Discord channel. Link is in the bio as well. And the Discord channel is great. It's a great community. And there's recommendations there for books and podcasts and civic action that you can take and that, frankly, we should all be taking. We should all be taking civic action because the people that have all the money and power right now are only using it to cement their own money and power and grow their own money and power. And the only way that we fight that is by doing the work, is by all of us doing the work together. There are a lot more of us than there are of them. So if you're like me and you look around and you're like, fuck me, man, this shit sucks. I wish there was something I can do. There is. If you don't know what it is, hit me up. I will happily steer you in the right direction. All right, everybody. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday starting around 11:30 a.m. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Good.